Maybe outside.
What's up, guys? It's podcast time.
Why do you start so high?
Podcast time.
Podcast.
Should we restart? What's up, guys? It's podcast time.
It's podcast time, and today we're gonna get into World War One and Japan's role.
In World War One. So, how did World War One start?
Well, it started with a search and assassination of this dude. Who's this dude, Emmett?
Well, there were many different reasons to what started World War One, but the main factor that most people accredit to the beginning of World War One is the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and he was killed by a Serbian nationalist.
So what's a nationalist?
Well, somebody who strongly identifies with their nation and supports the nation's interests. And yeah, it's kind of extreme sometimes.
So a war always has different sides. So what were the sides in World War One?
Well, there was two sides, the Allies and the Central Powers. In the Allies, there was Britain and the Commonwealth, Russia, France, Japan, US, and Italy. And then the opposing powers, which are the Central Powers, were Austria-Hungary, Germany, Bulgaria, Turkey, and the Ottoman Empire.
Okay, so we'll be talking about Japan in World War One. So, who was Japan allied with?
Well, Japan was allied with Great Britain, and the British asked them to help attack the Germans with the navy.
So Japan declared war on Germany after they wouldn't surrender their land in China on August 23rd, 1914.
So the war allowed Japan to try and take over the territories while Germany was still busy fighting in other areas.
The Japanese military had 2,000 deaths and 5,100 wounded soldiers. So, although they did suffer 2,000 casualties in the war against Germany and China, the fighting took place outside the country, which remained largely unscathed. So it was all just mostly fought. None of it was fought in Japan. It was actually
Mostly the mainland China where Germany had control. Yeah. So Japan just really wanted control to expand its land. So since the Germans were occupying parts of the mainland, they took the alliance with Britain to just fight the Germans off and take control.
So some things that helped with that, they had 68 warships or battleships, which helped in terms of firepower in sea events. So they had a pretty good navy against the Germans, so they could sail all the way down to China. The war resulted in Japan's acquisition of territory, economic boom, and emergence as a great power, with a primary seat at the table during the signing of the Treaty of Versailles in June 1919. So it ultimately led to them becoming more powerful, which led to them being super powerful, like an ultimate power in World War II.
Yeah, so Japan gained a whole lot of stuff from this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So without this, they probably couldn't be as powerful as they were in World War II, right?
Probably.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
But yeah, and then them in joining the war really helped the Allies win because they had extra support from the East and just different.
And I mean, before this, they just won a war between Russia.
Yeah, they just
Yeah.
Japan did?
Yeah, they had a war against Russia and they had defeated Russia. So actually, it kind of sucked for the Russians during World War One because they just lost the war.
Yeah, they were at a like disadvantage because they lost.
Also, at this time, wasn't Russia like they hadn't had their revolution or anything? They were pretty far behind a lot of the other.
I don't think they're too far behind.
Yeah.
They weren't. Oh, because they had Peter the Great, which we talked about in our earlier podcast, which you should go watch. Peter the Great,
Uh-huh.
and he helped them. He was a really strict ruler, and he helped Russia become like
Powerful.
And instead of being in the past, they kind of moved on into
They advanced, kind of.
Well, so the origins of Japan's military and like just fighting. So Japan
Yeah.
was like really isolated at first, but like they worked to not be as isolated from the world and to actually go in as an industrial power.
But like at first they were faced with like a lot of humiliation by the Western powers in past conflicts, particularly with China. And Japan tried to find like allies, and so they started making an alliance with the UK. So I bet that helped a lot.
So, what were some of the like key factors that helped them develop their army? Because they went from just having like not as like advanced to an advanced army that could actually help push back the Germans. So, what were some factors that helped with that?
Well, they expanded their empire because they took advantage of the war to take the German territories in China and the Pacific, expanding its influence in Asia.
Yeah, and they had a lot of economic growth, like the war boosted Japan's economy, strengthening its industrial base, which also supported military growth and expansion.
And Japan also wanted to be recognized as a major world power, and like the war helped increase national pride and military
It's like
militarism.
nationalism, like they
Yeah, national.
yeah.
So, Japan's military gained more power in the government during the war. So, they promoted a more militarized society, and
Foreign policy.
foreign policy. Yeah. So they really promoted their military more instead of just as like government.
Yeah, and because of their frustration at Versailles when Japan's like proposal for racial equality at the Versailles Peace Conference was rejected, it led to more resentment and it fueled the nationalist and militaristic feelings. So, yeah.
Yeah. Also, strategic concerns because Japan became more focused on using its military power to secure territorial gains and prevent Western influence.
So they really just kind of changed their focus onto their military and focused more on their influence on the world instead of just kind of keeping to themselves. They really spread out a lot more,
Yeah.
taking a lot more control.
So how did Japan get involved in World War One?
We kind of talked about this before. A lot was their alliance with Britain at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They had the Anglo-Japanese alliance also. Japan had an alliance with the United Kingdom signed in 1902, which committed both nations to assist each other if either of them were attacked or needed army. This alliance was originally aimed to counter Russian expansion in East Asia, like we talked about with Russia and Japan's war.
Yeah, and Britain had like a request for Japan. So when World War I broke out in Europe in August 1914, Britain, as a part of the Allied powers, asked Japan to honor its alliance and assist in securing its colonial interests in Asia and the Pacific.
Another way they were involved in the war, well, it was through the alliance that they started seizing German territories in Asia. So they saw opportunities to expand their influence in Asia while European powers were in the war.
Yeah. And also just like taking control of the German islands in the Pacific. Well, the German controlled islands. Yeah.
So these included Mariana, Caroline, and the Marshall Islands, which later became Japanese mandates under the League of Nations.
Those are the German Pacific Islands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which Japan took from them.
And also their naval contributions. Japan also provided naval support to the Allied powers by patrolling the Indian and Pacific Oceans, helping to safeguard Allied shipping lanes and to disrupt German naval operations in the region.
Let's talk about some of their economic and like diplomatic gains. So like their economic growth and their diplomatic positioning.
Well, in economic growth, so Japan joining the war helped boost the economy because they had more jobs and they could expand trade because they took over all this different area and they could secure different markets while the Europeans were really focused on the war because they were on the front lines of the battle.
Hmm.
And just with diplomatic positioning, Japan wanted to increase its political influence and was really want to be recognized as a major world power. So helping the allies and contributing to the war effort like helped build their relationship with the allied forces.
And they achieved what they wanted. They became one of the world powers, major world powers, which they used in World War II to take over a bunch of Asia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Japan's navy was pretty awesome. Well, I mean, like it played an important role throughout the war, right? I mean, it escorted Allied ships and maintained trade routes. And Japan's actions aided the war effort by protecting convoys and assisting global logistics. So, Evan, I said convoys, but I'm not really sure what that is. Do you know?
Like convoys are just missions kind of.
Yeah,
So
like convoying, like where you like send people. I don't know.
yeah, it's like a mission a group of ships or vehicles traveling together accompanied by armed troops. So it was just going with groups of civilian ships and like keeping ships safe from
Yeah.
attacks.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool.
What about Japan's involvement in China and like, expansion in general?
Well, Japan expanded its influence over China through a series of demands that made it a protectorate despite international condemnation. So what's a protectorate?
It's like so you're in charge of protecting a certain area. So like they're the ones protecting.
I see.
Okay. And I mean, not only that, Japan also sent China the famous 21 demands, which was to control parts of China and control Chinese police. And so China leaked the terms and created distrust between Japan and Britain and the US. Eventually, China agreed to most of the terms, but they did try to blackmail Japan.
Mm.
So how did they impact? What was Japan's impact of the Russian Revolution during this time?
Well, during the revolution in Russia, Japan took the opportunity to send troops to Siberia. Yeah, which was not good for the
Yeah.
right.
They were interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So how about after the war and the negotiations in Versailles where the peace treaty was signed?
Oh, well, I mean, at the Versailles Peace Conference, like just mentioned, Japan sought to solidify its new status as a world power, which made them gain their recognition for their territories, but it also made them face opposition to like their proposal for racial equality and the League of Nations, which is what we were saying how it sparked their like frustration at that conference.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they still had some more benefits, like their territory gains, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Japan secured territories including the Shandong Peninsula and Pacific Islands, which Ezra said.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
German islands.
And Japan also proposed a racial equality clause for the League of Nations, but unfortunately it was rejected by Western powers, causing frustrations. Yeah.
So unfortunately, that was not a benefit.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, they felt excluded even though they really helped in World War I, and they were just a little mad at the Western powers.
Yeah, yeah, but their like resentment from the conference kind of contributed to Japan's growing nationalism and expansionist policies, which unfortunately led to World War II.
Yes.
So just make sure for future references, don't try to make Japan mad. Yeah.
Well, it's probably fine now, but
Just don't make people feel left out in general.
yeah, that's the make.
People, let's acknowledge what they want here.
Yeah, because they like helped with World War One, but they didn't really get the recognition that they felt like they deserved. So that kind of led to it.
Wanted
They
the
were
credit
really mad. I think you just need to give people the credit
they deserve. Yeah.
So now we're gonna.
not just
Oh yeah.
just not dismiss what they say.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're gonna talk about how they actually emerged from like a smaller power to one of the greatest powers in the world in World War II.
World War One.
Well, after World War One
The one
into World War II, they became one of the greatest powers. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like by the end of World War One, Japan had become an important global power, and with its military and economics improving, yeah, but like still, there were still some conflicts because people were still scared that they would attack and try to be power, so they still had even more conflicts after.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked, or yes, I go to, because that was at the end of World War One. So you're asking about the
Yeah, he's asking about how they like became a bigger power in World War II after World War One.
So they played like a significant role in the Allied victory. Mostly in like the Asian Pacific
Region.
region where they took a lot of German territories. Its navy secured vital sea routes and helped maintain security in East Asia.
And with economic growth, Japan's economy grew really rapidly after World War One because there was increased industrialization and exports. And then the war disrupted global trade, giving Japan an economic boost because they filled in the gaps in manufacturing and exports.
Yeah, and like we've mentioned many times, they just gained the diplomatic recognition that they wanted because Japan's participation in the Versailles Peace Conference and its membership in the League of Nations marked its recognition as a major global power.
Yeah.
So now that they had like a kind of more influence and stronger economy and military, they began to exert more control over Asia, East Asia and Asia, especially through China and Korea.
Yeah.
At their growing influence.
So how did World War One affect Japan?
Well, they gained territories,
Yeah.
specifically China and the Pacific Islands.
Yeah, also like we've talked about a bunch before, their economy grew a lot, and their army grew after that.
But in 1919, the economy crashed, like also in 1920. So like even though it grew a lot, it also crashed.
Yeah. Okay, so they did well in 1919, then it crashed.
Okay, they did well in 1919, but then it crashed in 1920. So that kind of sucked.
Yeah, but I mean, well, they had an emergence as just a greater power, so I feel like it was worth it
They still did fine.
for them.
Despite the crash, they still like became one of the greatest powers.
Yeah, and because of their like becoming what is it called again? The global power. Was I global power or
Very strong.
yeah, I don't know. They just had more international relationships and it led to more trades. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it.
You want to talk about other countries, guys?
That's 4 weeks. Yeah, we could just talk about what we think.
Yeah, what do you guys think about
What we
this?
Well, I mean, the war let Japan become powerful. So now I think because of the war and because they were involved in World War One, they could become stronger and better, and then join World War II. And because of all their involvement, then now they're a better nation and a stronger nation. I think if they never had to follow up with the treaty with Britain, they wouldn't be as big of a nation now
Mm-hmm.
and as big of a power.
Well, if they didn't if they weren't as successful in World War One, they probably wouldn't have been as successful in World War Two either.
Yeah.
So it's
They would be mad at the people at the Allied powers. So that would they join Germany as Germany tries?
yeah, like if they hadn't joined World War One, they might have not joined
World War II.
the Axis powers in World War Two.
Possibly. Pearl Harbor wouldn't have been bombed.
And Japan wouldn't have been bombed either.
So yeah, and there'd be no nukes used on actual countries in warfare.
I mean, possibly they could have still joined the Axis powers in World War Two,
Yeah.
but it might have been less likely because they weren't as annoyed at the Allied powers for not like recognizing them as much because they didn't even join the war.
Yeah. So do you think it was a good thing that they joined World War One?
Just Japan or just
Just Japan.
It's kind of hard
I
because
feel like
after World War One, they did gain a lot of power, but they used that power to like attack other countries and
only
become part of the
benefit.
Axis powers in World War Two.
Because like they took over all of Asia, most of East Asia.
So I mean, it kind of benefited them, but then they lost all that Asia after World War Two. So it kind of didn't really
They were seen as tyrants and war criminals.
as they got nuked.
Yeah, that's not great.
So it kind of led to some rough things, but in the moment, it made them a lot more powerful right after World War.
And I think
What?
they still gained more from World War One because now they're pretty powerful. So I think overall they did
Yeah, like
the positive.
if they hadn't joined World War One in the first place, they might have still stayed like a kind of less significant nation that just kind of didn't have as much influence.
So I think even though they lost a lot, they still gained more than they lost.
Yeah, they still have like a huge influence and a good army.
Yeah.
So overall, I feel like it did kind of benefit them, despite them being like bombed and
at
least
the end
World War
of the
II.
day, let's not do war, guys.
No.
Yeah, we choose peace, guys.
But like economic.
Let's protect our peace here.
Yep.
But yeah,
For like
well, there's some wars that should be fought.
Like what?
Like if America hadn't done anything in World War II, that's them joining the war.
But
In World War One,
so you're saying that America had to join the war because
well, that was a just way of joining of a war.
yeah, but I'm not saying that them joining the war is wrong. I'm just saying like the start of it. You
Oh,
know, if there wasn't a start,
Wars are
right?
bad. Yeah.
If there wasn't a start, it wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
well, it's people have a hard time resolving conflicts. So
They
that's
should. They should just do one.
so if people weren't bad, it would be good.
I mean, yeah, wars are just part of what happens.
I think yeah, wars are just what happens because people are corrupted and
It's human nature. Is that what you're trying to say? It's because they need Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's it for our podcast. Japan during World War One. Now you know all about it.
thank you for listening and
If you have any ideas of what we should do next, you can comment that and we'll maybe think about it. Or if we don't do a main podcast about it, me and Sam can react to it in our react videos.
Just send the link.
Or just send like ideas for what we can do. Yeah.
yeah. I
Which we're trying to beat the Cricks YouTube channel in subscribers. So subscribe. And like the video if you like it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.